Who did we put in charge of Syria?
Oh, we handed that whole, well, again, we screwed the whole thing up so much
we handed it to a leader of fucking Al-Qaeda.
Yep. He was in ISIS initially. He was in Al-Qaeda initially in Iraq, fighting against us. We had him in jail, joined ISIS, broke off from ISIS, hand-selected by bin Laden's right-hand man, Ayman Zawahiri, to lead Nusra. And then they rebranded. And this is the number one way to fool Americans as a jihadist is just put on a suit and get a good PR company. And then apparently we'll just believe whatever you say.
And there's videos of this guy holding people's heads that he cut off.
Yeah, he's the thug.
He's shaking
he's a brutal
President
terrorist.
Trump's hand.
Yeah, horrible advice. Yep. And so
what the fuck are we doing?
Exactly.
What are we doing?
Because obviously, when you have a large-scale attack like this with thousands of terrorists converging on various cities, well-equipped, well-armed, and, camouflaged in the military uniforms of the country, obviously this was something that was planned by high-level orchestrators and directors.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Sahel Revolution. Today's video is, I'm actually going to talk less. I'm going to share a video. Hopefully I can shorten it so that you get at least the basic of what I want to share. But what I want to share today is something kind of, I think it's terrifying when you look at that, to be quite honest. And I'm going to probably explain it a little bit after you watch the video. But let me just put it in a very short, maybe explanation. So this is what's going on, especially in Mali right now. So the Arabs who, during the Gaddafi assassination, flew away from their country, came to Mali, and they obviously, as Africans are, we are very welcoming, we welcome them. Now that 2% of those nations are now the one actually causing havoc in Mali, to be quite honest. Which is so weird because now apparently they want to take almost 70% of the country. And when you look at what's happening right now in Mali and the fact that these terrorists now actually being called freedom fighters by, media like, France 24 and all those Western media, because they don't want to obviously associate themselves with terrorists. Rather, they will now, first of all, they started saying jihadists, and then it changed to rebels, and then it changed now to freedom fighters, obviously, because obviously it will be obvious, like if they have to say that they are supporting terrorists. But the funny thing about it, I think, again, they're insulting the intelligence of Africans because we know, obviously, these are, you have been doing interviews with the current president of Syria, who's obviously, well, now it's a president, right? But previously, who was he? He was actually the leader of Al-Qaeda, a well-known terrorist organization. So what do we have to say about that? Now, this is what's happening in the Sahel, guys. So these people want to take over so that later, I think what's happening in Mali is actually what has happened in Sudan. Because right now we have South Sudan and North Sudan, and we know that the Arabs has taken over North Sudan, and South Sudan is only the blacks who are obviously going through a general right now. So you know what, let me not even waste your time because I don't think I could be able to explain it very well. But the fact that these terrorists have the audacity to go to France and really talk to the leaders, shaking hands. My goodness, what kind of world are we living in? It's almost like this world is run by a bunch of perverts, a bunch of terrorists, a bunch of like just really, really the mafia bosses. The mafia bosses have taken over, guys.
So we have a crime syndicate that runs the United States federal government. And I think, like, I've watched a lot of mafia shows. Of course, they're great. Godfather, all of that stuff. Usually the mob boss is pretty smart, like diabolical for sure, evil, sociopathic, but they're kind of smart. Like they have a method to their madness. This guy's brain is so cooked. And the fact that there's still so much acquiescence, still so much capitulation, Republican support surrounding this war is very, very solidified. And these people genuinely believe in nothing. Like if you would have polled MAGA 2 months ago, do you think wars in the Middle East are a waste of time and drive up the national debt and that Donald Trump shouldn't do it? They say, absolutely. We are in the post-neocon era. And then all roads lead to these guys being such neocons.
Listen to this guy.
So this guy right here, one of the terrorist leaders who organized the massive attacks in the country, was able to travel to France, go to the French state-owned broadcaster, and according to the Frenchman that I mentioned before, was able to meet with the DGSE, the French intelligence services, when he went over to Paris. Keep in mind that these terrorist groups are affiliated with Al-Qaeda, right? So we have Al-Qaeda affiliated terrorists able to go to European capitals, go to the state broadcaster, sit down for interviews on the government state-owned broadcaster, and nobody says anything. Nobody's taken aback by these events. Nobody is like taken aback and like and coming out and saying it that France is a sponsor of terrorism, is a terrorist state. And on top of that, on top of the fact that they're allowing Al-Qaeda to come to their country, which is not surprising because obviously the leader in Syria is also a former commander of Al-Qaeda as well. And President Macron invited him for a state visit as well, taking pictures, shaking hands in front of the cameras, in front of everybody. So clearly when it comes to Al-Qaeda, these nations have no problem with Al-Qaeda. France, the United States, the Western countries have no problem with Al-Qaeda as long as Al-Qaeda is willing to play ball, as long as Al-Qaeda is willing to sign deals, as long as Al-Qaeda is willing to come to the table and negotiate. They have no problem with Al-Qaeda. Even Donald Trump invited the former Al-Qaeda commander, the Syrian leader, to the White House down in Washington to, sip champagne and eat steak. So clearly, as we can see, they have no problem with Mali being overtaken by Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda installing the government in the country. They have no problem. They'll invite Iyad Agali, the leader of the Al-Qaeda affiliate. They'll invite him down to Paris. They'll put a suit on him and they'll invite him to Washington. They have no problem with Al-Qaeda. They have no issue with Al-Qaeda. But anyway, I want to switch lanes a little bit. I want to go back to a statement that was made by the foreign minister in Mali some months back, right? Where he was speaking on this topic right here, the international community, terrorism, things like that. He said some interesting things. Big up to the brother, like I said, the freshest foreign minister in the game, the best dressed foreign minister on the continent of Africa. Big up to my brother. Play the clip. I'll be right back.
Does an international community exist? Is this actually a community? Is it truly international? Because Mali, Burkina, and Niger presented a very, very clear and simple position before the Security Council that Ukraine, a member of the United Nations which has obligations, openly declared through its officials, intelligence services, but also diplomats, that it actively provides intelligence and logistical support to terrorist groups in northern Mali, which is completely unacceptable. To this very day, the Security Council has not even acknowledged receipt of what we submitted. We know that Russia supports our initiative, but we haven't heard a single word from anyone. So, what exactly does that mean? I think I'll throw the question back to you. Is the so-called international community truly working for peace and stability, or is it simply a policy of double standards? When an ally and a friend is called into question, I think we prefer to look the other way. Our people are deeply disappointed, and we believe that now more than ever, our nations must take charge of their own destiny and do what is needed to guarantee our security, because we are convinced that the methods employed by terrorist groups or others are aimed at political objectives. That is absolutely clear. However, it's not my responsibility to answer for the international community you just mentioned.
All right, we back. Now, France is not the only state, not the only government with affiliations with terrorist groups. You also have Algeria as well. I've seen a lot of people from Algeria celebrating the terrorist attacks yesterday. So Algeria, and we already know a while back, they had shot down a Malian drone. If you remember that story, we covered that on the channel as well. Take a look up on the screen. Back in 2025, last year, Algeria shoots down a Malian drone, escalating tensions, right? So when the Malian Air Force was conducting counterterrorism operations, was zeroing in on a high-level target, the Algerians actually shot down the Malian drone close to the border, saying that it violated their airspace and essentially saved the life of a high-profile terrorist target. Some people believe that it was actually Iyad Agali. Take a look up on the screen, the guy to the right. Some people believe that the Malian Air Force was closing in on him and was about to strike, and then the Algerians came and saved the day. There's also many speculations that believe that he also takes refuge. Many of the terrorists up north, many folks believe that they take refuge in southern Algeria, just like in Mauritania, where the leader of FLA, the guy to the left, where he was seeking refuge last year as well. So Mauritania, Algeria, you have these nations in the region that are also either indirectly or directly encouraging and sponsors of terrorism. But one particular nation that the foreign minister in Mali had mentioned in that statement that he mentioned Ukraine, right? Now, if you remember, there was a major terrorist attack in the north, I think back in 2024, I think it was. And it was revealed that Ukraine had actually played a major role in supplying the terrorists with the equipment that was necessary to carry out that massive attack where damn near 100 Malian soldiers got killed, as well as Russian mercenaries. Subsequently, Andrei Yusov, the spokesperson for Ukraine's Ukraine's Directorate of Intelligence, right? So the intelligence director of Ukraine at the time, Andrei Yusov, implicitly acknowledged on local television that his organization, that the Ukrainian intelligence, was collaborating with the Malian terrorists. I'm not going to call them rebels, right? They love to call them rebels, try to humanize them and give them legitimacy. We're going to call them what they are, the terrorists, right? Andrei Yusov, the director of Ukrainian intelligence, acknowledged on local television that his intelligence agency was collaborating with the terrorists. He had said the terrorists had received the necessary information which enabled them to carry out the successful terrorist attack against the Russian war criminals, without going into further detail, right? So obviously we know what interest that he has at play. He's currently at war with Russia. So in his mind, he's just thinking, I'm attacking Russia. But in the Malian soldiers, that's just collateral damage because they're affiliated with Russia, right? They're doing business with Russia. So we're going to kill them too, right? So that's his mentality. And of course, we know who has been supplying Ukraine with all their weapons in recent years. The West, right? The United States, France, all their allies have been bum rushing Ukraine with an endless supply of weapons. They have an endless arsenal of weapons because they're currently at war with Russia. So they're a proxy for the West, right? So Ukraine went and attacked an African country because they're in some war with Russia.
Because today, the fluctuating nature of the fight against terrorism leads us to observe that terrorism is now supported and financed by states. Some states in the region, other states or powers from outside our region. Building trust requires that we have a clear-eyed analysis of all these elements.
We have to break this up. We have to go to war in Syria. We have to take down Assad. Arab Spring happened. There was some energy from the people. I think it was somewhat organic. But then in short order, we came in and we said, we're going to work with the Israelis, but we're also going to have to work heavily with the Sunni population on the ground in Syria to create an uprising. And that's where ISIS came from. We worked directly with Al-Qaeda. Hillary Clinton's emails confirm this. The operations that we were doing to support the so-called Free Syrian Army, and there were some moderates there, but the most effective guys initially were Al-Qaeda and then eventually ISIS. Now, obviously, ISIS got out of control and they started plotting attacks in Europe. They started plotting attacks in America. They took over large swaths of Iraq. So we then had to go back and put out once again the brush fire that we had started and go after ISIS. That's where I lost my late wife. But Israel was the driving factor in that. We took down Saddam, who was a strong man against Israel. We then had to go in and take out Assad, who was a strong man against Israel as well. And now this is the third phase. We're going now into Iran to take out that strong government for Israel.
Who did we put in charge of Syria?
Oh, we handed that whole, well, again, we screwed the whole thing up so much
we handed it to a leader of fucking Al-Qaeda.
Yep. He was in ISIS initially. He was in Al-Qaeda initially in Iraq, fighting against us. We had him in jail, joined ISIS, broke off from ISIS, hand-selected by bin Laden's right-hand man, Ayman Zawahiri, to lead Nusra. And then they rebranded. And this is the number one way to fool Americans as a jihadist is just put on a suit and get a good PR company. And then apparently we'll just believe whatever you say.
There's videos of this guy holding people's heads that he cut off.
Yeah, he's the thug.
He's shaking
he's a brutal
President
terrorist.
Trump's hand.
Yeah, horrible advice. Yep. And so
what the fuck are we doing?
Exactly.
What are we doing?
Okay, so let me explain it from a Namibia perspective so that you understand, because I share most of my news with Namibians. So what happened is that a country who wants your resources sponsor terrorists to be in your country, and then in the time when you need weapons, they actually refuse to sell you the weapons. And usually there was a time, I think Asimi Goeta shared this, when they were just about to get the terrorists and they were told that if they move, they will be unalive, right? So what happened is that in that sense, Namibian experienced a coup and they took over because they realized that these people are the ones sponsoring the terrorists in our country to actually get our resources. So let's kick them out. When they kicked them out, the country started being better, becoming better. However, the country that they kick out, let me use an example of France, for example, now are sponsoring other terrorists so that it looked like the people that you now took in control to help you, let me say now you are using Russia in that sense, so that they can prove that Russia is not as good as France, but I don't even understand. That's why I'm saying these people are insulting our intelligence, because we already know that when France was there, you were not helping us. We're actually being unalive at a higher level than now, right? So why would you think we'll think that, unless you really think we are dumb, to be quite honest? That's what it really comes down to. Anyway, so now they are sponsoring terrorists to come to your country to actually destabilize it, so that they can say that the leaders that you have, in this sense, Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, Niger, Tiani, and obviously Mali, Assimi Goïta, they want to prove that those leaders are not good enough and that there is still chaos because France has left. But that's a problem. We know, every single person knows. And Tiani is not apologetic to actually name the names, even though the other two leaders are very, not apologetic in that sense, but maybe I should say diplomatic. Tiani is not diplomatic. He named it every single time when something happened. He named them by name. He plainly will say Macron is responsible for what's going on right now. So after listening to that video, obviously you know what's going on. And if they can do that in those countries, they can do it in any country. Just because they are not doing it in Namibia doesn't mean that they will never succeed doing it, guys. Anyway, thank you for listening, and please share the video, like, comment. Let's get the conversation going, guys. From me, Jehovah, bye.